Welcome, everybody. We're delighted that you're here. We know for some of you getting here was not easy. Well, getting to the synagogue was probably easy. Getting inside was somewhat more difficult, and I hope that you will forgive the necessary security that may have been an inconvenience to you, but was essential in order for us to conduct this program. We're also grateful to all the candidates for mayor who are joining us this evening. And I'm not going to give a long introduction. Instead, I'm going to begin by asking them all to make opening statements. And I don't know, why don't we'll start on my right and go all the way down. And then for closing statements, we'll start with Jan Perry and come back this way. All right, so opening statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes, and Larry Weintraub, who has been indispensable in the organizing of this event, and we want to both thank him and Rebecca Small, our program director, for their help. We'll be keeping time. So,
start with me. I was just getting organized. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you to the organizers of tonight's event and for all of you coming out that are here tonight. My name is Kevin James. I am, of course, running for mayor of Los Angeles. I moved here almost 26 years ago. It was May 1987. I've been a lawyer pretty much that entire time. I have private sector experience as an attorney and public sector experience as well as a federal prosecutor here in Los Angeles. I have nonprofit experience as a board member and vice chair and co-chair for many years of AIDS Project Los Angeles right here in town, and broadcast experience covering City Hall as a broadcaster on KABC and KRLA. And when I came here, like I said, about 26 years ago, all you needed to succeed in Los Angeles was a dream and a drive to do good. But since then, something has changed about our city, and as a columnist at the Wall Street Journal wrote, Los Angeles has been in a state of decline, a decade of decline. So I entered the mayor's race to put our city back on track, and with many priorities that must be part of the campaign and the mayoralty. There are a few that I do want to talk about and focus on, at least in an introductory fashion, knowing that we're going to get to a number of additional topics tonight. First of all, I will bring jobs back to Los Angeles by working to make our economic environment friendly to small business, friendly to the private sector. I will budget our city with long-term solutions instead of the short-term accounting tricks that we see from City Hall. And education will be a key priority. I've called on the LAUSD to create a trade tech diploma because giving kids choices and giving kids an option for something that they're passionate about, not every kid is college bound, nor do they want to be. But vocational jobs are something that we need right here at home. It's Kevin James. I look forward to our discussion this evening, and thank you.
Thank you all for being here and engaging with us in this candidate forum, for really having a stake in this next election. We're at a crossroads. March 5th is going to be a critical point where we can actually make the decision of going the same way or something new. When I walk around LA, I see hardworking men and women. I see creativity, energy, diversity. Unfortunately, though, I feel that our elected officials haven't done it justice. I'm tired of calling baby steps real progress. We're on the brink of bankruptcy. We have the highest unemployment rate than any other major metro area in the country. We have the lowest high school graduation rate than any comparable city in the country. I'm running for mayor because I want to address those issues head on without any special interests behind me. I will invest in our communities where it will do the most good, where it will have the most impact, especially in the most underinvested areas such as the South LA area, the East Side, Pico Union, the East San Fernando Valley, and any other area that merits some investment where we could get a good return on our investment. I will support entrepreneurs across the city and make sure that there's an entrepreneurship hub with training in each council district. I want to make sure that we're investing in our workforce, so we have the best trained workforce in the country, so we can get people back to working again. I will make LA a leader in urban design. With the transit system that begs easy mobility, we need to move in a direction so that we create more options. We need efficient, environmentally friendly options, and we need a telecommunications network that works for everyone. That's what the city needs, that's what you deserve, and that's what I will bring as mayor.
Good evening, and thank you, Rabbi Wolpe. Thank you to the Jewish Journal for, of course, streaming this live, and to thank all of you. I get so excited when I go to some of these debates, although there have been a lot of them, but at debates to see so many people who care about the future of Los Angeles, who care about what happens to the residents of all of Los Angeles. I'm running to be mayor of all of LA so that no part of our city is left behind. Whether you live in Boyle Heights or in the San Fernando Valley or East LA, South LA, or the West Side, you deserve the kind of services that every part of the city deserves. I've been proud to stand with many of you in support of Israel, support for the things that we believe in, the divestiture in Iran, to making sure that we always stand up for our ideals. But most importantly, I have served as a city controller in identifying waste, fraud, and abuse, $160 million in things that we could do differently to balance our budget. But as we look at the future of Los Angeles, we need to look at bringing Hollywood home. It's our signature industry. To bringing clean tech and hubs of economic activity, to making sure that we have apprenticeship programs and job training programs, to deal with our issue of traffic and transportation. I don't know about you, but I'm sure we all had traffic tonight getting here. We need to continue to develop our seamless public transportation system and invest in our infrastructure. We also need to make sure that we have common sense solutions like no road construction during rush hour and actually enforce it, and more left-hand turn signals, and more synchronized lights. We also need to look to our future. A world-class economy can't be true without a world-class educational system. As mayor, I will make sure we work on these issues, and I have the unique experiences of not only being a small business owner, working in an iconic industry of DreamWorks, but also being a city council member controller. I ask for your support tonight. I look forward to discussion about how we make Los Angeles the great city I know it can be. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Rabbi Wolpe, and thank you to the Sinai Temple for us being here. It was wonderful to be here for High Holidays. It is great to always see this room, which I've come to for so many dinners and events, filled with folks who are bucking the trend in America, which is to care about politics. The trend right now is not to. Too many people have left politics. What we call politics right now is people shouting at each other instead of listening to one another. So thank you all for being here. And make sure we get out and vote, because half the voters who voted in November, if statistics hold true, will vote for their mayor, even though who the mayor is in your town is more important, arguably, than even who's in the White House. I'm running for mayor to make Los Angeles work again. I am a proven job creator, somebody who loves solving problems and who has gotten results as a council member, as council president, and as your next mayor. Whether it's neighborhoods that have fallen on tough times in my district, like Hollywood and Silver Lake and Echo Park, that were beset with crime and no investment, and the turnaround that we've experienced there, or whether it's tackling some of the toughest issues that are the most difficult to face, like balancing our budget in a downturn in our economy. This is what fills my life, a passion for public service and serving this city that has given me so much. I'm somebody who gives you straight talk and who will produce results. And I want a city hall that works again, that returns your call, that answers your question, that takes care of your problem, and that you feel that your taxpayer money is actually producing something that you can see, but that also tackles the big issues, whether it's traffic, homelessness, affordable housing, growing our local economy, and improving our schools. We have to do both the small things and the big things as well. I would be very honored to earn your support and to be your mayor here in Los Angeles. I live the values and priorities of Judaism, be they that we have to help our fellow human being, or that we have to be a good partner to Israel and make sure that we have a secure world. But those values that I was raised with are the values that would inform me as your next mayor. I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Councilwoman Jan Perry, and I want to be your next mayor on March 5th, 2013. And thank you, Rabbi Wolpe, to the staff and all the sponsors tonight, and to all of you for taking the time out of your busy lives to be here with us tonight. Because we're in a synagogue, I want to share a little bit about who I am. Many, many years ago, I chose to become Jewish. Little did I know that that would be such a life-transforming experience, one that sustains me in my work, in my life, and my desire to bring justice and safety and opportunity to all people in this city. The principles of Judaism will guide me as your next mayor. I want you to think about some of the work that I've done the last 11 years representing downtown Los Angeles. Downtown has become the economic, cultural, sports, and entertainment epicenter for this region under my leadership. We can bring this kind of revival to every part of the city. I plan to do this by engaging the private sector, leading the public sector, and listening to community voices. I don't seek the office of mayor as a stepping stone for higher office. This allows me to make tough decisions today and do what's best for all Angelenos, because I'm not beholden to anyone's special interest. Now, the tough decisions start by solving our budget problems and focusing again on core city services, fire and police, for example, renegotiating on healthcare costs and pension costs. Our city is at risk, and I am the only candidate willing to make the very difficult decisions that we have to make to close our deficit. I want us to live within our means and make the city of Los Angeles work in the best way possible. I will bring a relentless focus and hands-on management, hard work, and straightforward leadership to this office. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for your statements that give us at least a little glimpse into who you are and what it is that you would propose to do for the city. And at this time, now that everybody is more or less gathered, I also want to thank our partners for this evening, the Los Angeles Jewish Journal, which if you don't subscribe, you should, which is an indispensable bit of journalistic Jewish community building, as well as investigative reporting and blogs. And we are all here at Sinai big fans of the Journal, and we hope that you are, or if not, will take this opportunity to become fans, both of their website and, of course, of the printed edition, since words still exist on paper. And for whatever brief time that is still true, it's worth reading them. We were talking before in the green room about whether you would be asked any questions tonight that you have not been asked before. And we decided to modify that to any cogent questions that you haven't been asked before. And I thought that I would actually begin with one or two personal questions as opposed to policy questions. I want to begin by asking you this. You're all obviously capable and confident people, and you have plans, and you have some certainty in your ability to carry them out, or you wouldn't be running. So what I'd like to know is, what are you bad at? What's your biggest flaw, not necessarily as a human being, but what would it be as a mayor? And I want to edit you in advance by saying you can't say I care too much or, you know, I'm too focused. In other words, you can't actually describe a merit as a flaw, but it has to be a genuine flaw.
Okay.
And the reason I'm asking this is not just to make you uncomfortable, although that has its own entertainment value, but because the capacity to be self-critical is actually important for leadership. And so one day when one of you is mayor and you have a board of rabbis, I'll tell you mine, but for tonight, let's find out yours. And this time, why don't we start with, go skip one and start with Emmanuel Pletez.
So my biggest flaw is that I sometimes forget to think about some of the little things in management, and I'm always thinking big picture, and I'm thinking big vision, and I'm thinking about the things that we need to do to address the biggest challenges, and I'm willing to take on the biggest challenges out there because I think I know we can, and I bring a team so we can do it together. But sometimes I forget that we need to continue these smaller building blocks so we can get there. And as mayor, I will make sure that I have a team around me to help me with all these smaller building blocks so I really do accomplish big things and address the biggest issues that are out there today.
So my husband, who's here, thinks I'm perfect, so I'm not sure. Right, Dean?
Okay, so tell us his
Ask him to
biggest
leave
flaw.
the room
That's
for a
right.
couple minutes. Go take a walk, Dean. We'll be back.
Well, on a personal everything, I keep everything, as he knows that, you don't want to look at our garage and that. But I think that one of the hardest things for me is delegating. I like sometimes to take responsibility myself, and sometimes you need to delegate and say, you know what, there are others that can do this as well, and give them that responsibility. I try to even do that with my 9-year-old and give him and let him fall if he needs to do it. But I think sometimes elected officials want to be able to take care of everything and be responsible, and I sometimes have a challenge with that. That's an honest answer.
I just want to say for the record, this is the first time I've watched us all not use all our time up. And I'll be really brief, too. I think my challenge is not trying to do everything. It's a challenge in life. I'm serving on the city council. I was city council president. I serve as a naval officer. I'm a new father. And there are times when I've realized you can't do it all. If you want to, it comes at the expense of everything. And it's something I always struggle with. And even as a leader, I'll look at 10 issues and 10 needs out there, and I want to do them all. And it's a constant struggle to say, look, 3 really important things are better than 10 half done. But that's probably my biggest fault.
Okay, Rabbi, I need clarification. Okay? Do you mean biggest flaw as a human being or as a public servant?
As a what characteristic of your personality would impede your being a perfect public servant?
You gotta know, okay, my biggest flaw, I think, is to know when to turn it off and to stop. I go out through the course of the day, and I'm talking to people, I'm handing out cards, and I say to people, well, if you need something, just call me. And then, people, I have an extra line in my house that, it's a business line, and so people are calling me, and then they'll be calling me 11:30 at night, and, they just want to talk, and then, I need to set up boundaries.
Right.
Say, okay, it's 11:30, I will call you tomorrow, and we'll work on it then. I gotta do better at that.
Some might say I talk too much. I mean, I was a talk show host.
We would never say that.
Yeah.
But the first part of your question was, what are you bad at? Golf. And I will tell you this too. I am from Norman, Oklahoma, where I grew up in my young years, and I went to the University of Oklahoma. And I will use the word obnoxious, an obnoxious Oklahoma Sooner football fan. And I really do not like to lose. And when it comes to, and I think that was instilled in me, but more to the point, those of you that have seen some of at least one of my cable television appearances would say that I get easily frustrated somewhat. And then I think more applicable to the office, honestly, I can be quite impatient at times. And certainly some of the folks that work with me might attest to that. Always in good spirit, though.
Pursuing the questions that may tempt you to be evasive.
But never evasive.
I said may tempt. I didn't say you were. I just said may tempt you to be. Let me ask you, if you weren't in this race, which of your opponents would you vote for and why?
Oh, God.
Ms. Gruhl, you're first.
Never short for words, Kevin.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you're right. That's why I like coming to service here, because you always challenge us when I come here to that. And I've not been asked that question. Let's see. Well, I guess I would have to say Jan Perry, because Jan, as we both are women and have worked together over the years, and someone who is a fighter, we haven't always agreed. But I think Jan has done a good job of looking at jobs downtown and creating those jobs and been a fighter for her communities. And she is someone who doesn't take no for an answer. So And I think as well, as I said, we do have a chance to elect a first woman mayor of Los Angeles, and I think that would be another reason as well.
So just so you don't think I'm copycat, I'd already written down Jan Perry, so now she has 2 votes. She may walk away with the election here. I want to give a compliment because it's so rare we get the chance to do this. I really admire Kevin's brains and his sharpness, Emmanuel's fearlessness and focus and hard work, and I think the incredible breadth of experiences that Wendy brings to this race. But Jan, on a personal level, is somebody who inspires me. I think lots of times we count people out, even in a race like this, and I would never count out Jan Perry. And I would certainly take the lesson from her that you fight for what you believe in and let the chips fall where they may.
Emmanuel, you inspire me because of your youth, your enthusiasm, your intelligence, in spite of the fact that you went to Stanford. And I admire you. I admire your intellect, and I admire the fact that you've come so far, and you still have a good life ahead of you, and you are a great role model to young people. And as we live longer and try to be independent, you know, it's your generation who will carry it forward and bring other people along with you, and you have the gift of technology, and you will be able to use that to benefit not only us, but the young people of your generation. And so I just want to express my admiration for you. And on a side note, this is kind of funny, but Kevin makes me laugh a lot. Even though we're very different politically.
You know, at the risk of maybe making a little news for the reporters here, if you're keeping count, it would be Jan Perry. And not just because she just said I was funny. But, you know, Ms. Perry, willing to stand up and expose what she saw as what I might characterize as corruption in City Hall with backroom deals and frustration around the redistricting debacle that took place in City Hall this year, and willing to, you know, deal with what that meant politically inside City Hall. For that, that's the reason, and that would be the vote on this stage.
3 votes, Jan.
So my vote is also for Jan Perry. Well, first I'll say is that I really would like all of us to work together post-election, because I think the city's problems are dire, and we need to be working together and leverage all of our experiences to actually go head on with these problems. I think Jan Perry has shown a lot of courage in the city council. Jan Perry has been willing to say when she has made mistakes, and she's willing to address them. And I think that it takes a lot of courage for any leader, especially in a public role, to be willing to say that and then move forward with it, knowing that she still has full faith and confidence in herself that she can solve the problems. And, you know, council member, my vote would be for you if I wasn't running.
4 votes.
Sweet.
Well, I'd say if they withdraw, you've got it made.
Only if we're voting.
Right, only if you're voting. Yes. Let me ask you something to help clarify for all of us the role of the mayor in general in city government. Having grown up in Philadelphia, the mayor was a dominant presence. I mean, everybody knew Frank Rizzo. School kids knew Frank Rizzo. Everyone did. In Daily Chicago or Koch's New York, there was nobody who didn't know the mayor. When I got to Los Angeles, even though people who were somewhat familiar with politics, for them the mayor was a presence, I don't feel that the mayor in Los Angeles has ever been the kind of iconic figure to all of the city that the mayors in these East Coast cities have been. I wonder what it is that prevents the mayor from Los Angeles from exercising the kind of both presence and control, as a rule, that these mayors did. Was it the time, or is it the structure of the city? And I think we start this time with Eric Garcetti.
No, I did the last
Oh, you did?
time.
Okay.
I voted
The
for
mayor,
Jan.
that's right. The mayor has to be a combination of, I think, vision and results. And oftentimes in Los Angeles, we've had, in the most complicated political creation we ever could have put together. I mean, just in the county of LA alone, 88 different cities, 20-something levels of government on top of each other, from a school district to our transportation authority to our water quality district to our air quality district. I mean, if you have a problem with rats and roaches, you have a whole level of government for that, just called vector control. I mean, we've divided and subdivided and changed both, in every geographical and functional sense government. So that's one of the reasons. But it's also one of the reasons why in this campaign I've said I want to be a mayor, not just for the city of Los Angeles, but I want to be a mayor for this entire region, for Long Beach, for Glendale, for Beverly Hills, for Santa Monica, for San Fernando. Because not of those cities, they have mayors, but 2 or 3 times a year I want to open up Getty House, which is the mayor's residence, and just invite everybody in for a day with no agenda, so that we can, instead of bragging that we stole a business from Glendale or vice versa, which doesn't do anything for somebody looking for a job here, we didn't net one job, we can get together and look at how we're going to compete as a region and to build that power both formally and informally. So the mayor of Long Beach and El Segundo and Hawthorne and Burbank and Glendale and Los Angeles could get together to talk about the aerospace industry, how it's changing and going from the old fighter jets to maybe SpaceX and the exploration of space. Those sorts of things are what require cutting across what has generally been a pretty powerless structure.
Okay, Kevin James, hear me now. I think one of the most influential mayors in the city of Los Angeles has been Tom Bradley. And I came out here in 1974 to go to college, and I was stunned that you could actually stand in the living room and hear a man, Tom Bradley, speak to people. He would come directly to people in their homes and just talk to them, talk without notes, without any particular agenda. They could just ask him questions about how the city works, what are his positions, what are his thoughts. He was a mayor who imparted wisdom and experience, but he also shared a lot of who he was with the people who elected him, the people he represented. So for me, he was a role model of what a mayor should be. A mayor should be out amongst people. A mayor has to manage her time to make sure that you actually get work done in the office and outside of the office, to be in the community, to move initiatives forward, but to do it in a hands-on way, so by the time you bring it back into City Hall for a vote, you've built energy, you've built momentum, you've built consensus, community support, the funding's in place, and then it's time to vote. That's how you move a city forward, and that's how I want to move the city forward as the next mayor.
And Ms. Perry, one for you.
Uh-oh.
When I moved here, young people knew who Tom Bradley was. And he was an iconic mayor. Now, there are some reasons, I think, Rabbi, to answer your question as to why we don't have the same attention on the mayor that these other cities have that are important. One of them is that we do live under the shadow of Hollywood. And when you turn on the news, the leading story is Lindsay Lohan. Way too much. And I work in the entertainment industry as a lawyer. Some of the biggest news, if you want to see our press pool following Mayor Villaraigosa feverishly, it's not because of a policy position, it's because he had his picture in Cabo with Charlie Sheen. And so that's part of the problem with our society as a whole, as a member of the media. I point that out because too much of our time is spent. And yes, it is a critical industry and economically an engine. And by the way, I heard the term Bring Hollywood Home earlier. I'm the candidate that was endorsed by the Bring Hollywood Home Foundation in this race. But there's another issue too. And that's a different time today than when Mayor Bradley was in office. Term limits. Term limits here because many of the iconic mayors served a much longer period of time.
That's true. That's a good point.
Kevin is correct that term limits make a big difference in terms of creating iconic mayors. And I don't think the city of LA needs an iconic mayor. The city of LA needs a functioning economy, a workforce that is skilled, and a place where anyone can continue coming to live out their, not just American dream, but Angelino dream. What the mayor does need to do, whether the mayor wants to be remembered or not, the mayor needs to be present in communities. The mayor needs to think outside of just the purview of what's happening inside City Hall and be out in every council district, in every neighborhood. There are many areas in this city that have been neglected for a very long time. And partly it could be because you get more press by showing up to parties in Hollywood. However, the next mayor needs to take a fundamentally different approach. Look, I was born in the South LA area and raised on the East Side, and although I personally worked for the guy who's currently mayor, I understand that mayors, since I was a kid, hardly ever visited those areas. And quite frankly, they still don't. So as mayor, I will make sure that regardless of what I want my legacy or my policy proposals, I need to be present in these communities, inspire folks, and make sure that we're focused on our workforce, that they're skilled and get the jobs that they need.
I was 17 years old when I met Tom Bradley. I was going to John F. Kennedy High School in the San Fernando Valley. And I came down to City Hall and got a Youth Leadership Award. And I fell in love, yes, with Tom Bradley. He was bigger than life. But I think as you talk about, Rabbi, it's not about the power you are given. It is the power you take and you demonstrate that you can use it for the right purposes. How many of you met Tom Bradley in your lifetime? There you go. Tom Bradley was a mayor for all of Los Angeles. As I talk about, I was able to not only be on his youth council, but work for him for 10 years. It was some of my most memorable part of my career. But he was a mayor for all of Los Angeles, no matter where you lived, and provided the services. And he was a man of few words. He could give a great speech, but boy, what he really did is roll up his sleeves. And that's what I learned. So you could see him any part of the city, whether it was going out with the sanitation workers and meeting them in their community and talking to them at their job, to talking to businesses about building our iconic downtown or pushing to have a transportation system. As I think about what kind of mayor we want to be and the power that you have, it's about doing the job. Because guess what? If you do the job you were elected to do, you can go very far, going in a private sector or going to another level. That's what Tom Bradley did. He did the job, rolled up his sleeves, and that's where you have power, and that's where you demonstrate you're a mayor for all of Los Angeles.
So almost everyone on the panel this evening, maybe perhaps everyone, has spoken about the city as a totality, and also about the reality that we're divided up into different neighborhoods, different ethnic groups, certainly different socioeconomic groups. What I'm wondering is how, there's an old story about a rabbi. You're going to get at least one tonight. So there's an old story about a rabbi who was praying to God that the rich should give to the poor, and he came home and his wife said, well, how did your prayer go? And he said, well, half of it was answered. The poor are willing to take. I wonder how you're going to persuade the inhabitants of the more privileged parts of our city to care about the inhabitants of the less privileged parts of our city. Is that the mayor's job? And if so, do you have a strategy for trying to essentially touch people's hearts so that they care?
I think you start by meeting people where they are. Everyone's community has people who are at risk, people who are frail or elderly or on fixed incomes. People have family members who are grappling or in the grips of mental illness or recovering from substance abuse. People we know who are fleeing the effects of domestic violence. People who have children with special needs. That's what we share in common. It doesn't matter where you are in this city. Everyone is affected by that in some way. Everybody knows a vet. Everybody knows vets who need help when they come back. That is common no matter where you go. So as mayor, I think it's important to use the office, to use the position to teach and to teach us all about our commonalities. I can speak to that because I'm an African-American woman who's Jewish who's represented a Latino district for the last 11 years. So the mayor can be the bridge builder. I've been the bridge builder, and I've seen the results of that, and they have been good. They have been good because I've brought jobs to people who needed to get back on their feet, places for people to buy healthy food, built places for people to be able to work out and deal with the issues of hypertension, heart disease, and diabetes, childhood obesity. Everybody needs green space. Everybody needs to, have a place to throw off stress, and everybody needs a way to be together with their family. And as mayor, that is a vision that I can define collectively with all of you.
To answer your question, Rabbi, which is a very important question, it's something that I've spent a significant part of my adult life doing. I'm an openly gay man, and when I moved here in the late 80s, I was part of a community whose middle age had gone to about 18 years old because of the AIDS epidemic. And I started working with APLA for many years. And imagine, many of you here will remember, imagine the stigma of what those years brought. And we had to convince people that had means, that had no connection to this epidemic, to help a community primarily initially of gay men or intravenous drug users who were dying inexplicably and quickly. And then we saw the face of the epidemic change. And we had to move our services, when I was in leadership at APLA, into low-income and minority communities, but still maintain our $20 million a year budget, to convince the first group you talked about, to care about and support the second group that you talked about. And to this day, we remain successful doing it.
This hits at the core of why I'm running and my candidacy. I'm the only one up here that has the same facility of being in a boardroom with the top executives of this country as being on a playground with the most troubled youth in our city. I grew up in those areas. In fact, growing up, I had to move around 10 times before I was 10 years old. My family was so poor that we weren't even able to access Section 8 housing. I understand what it's like to be in these areas, but I've also been blessed with the opportunities to be at some of our most elite institutions, such as the top investment bank, top management consulting firms out there, working in the White House and the US Treasury on these economic recovery issues. I know that the argument is not for someone wealthy to have to care for someone poor, but the argument needs to be that you must because it's going to benefit all. You must because we need to increase our tax base to be able to have skilled workers. We must because it's in their interest to do it. It's in everyone's interest to do that. I understand how this economy works because I've been there. I've been in the private sector. I've been in the public sector. I've chaired 2 nonprofits. And I've lived the problems that the city is facing. And that's what I'm all about and what I will bring to the table as mayor.
Answer to your question, Rabbi, is absolutely. It's the moral responsibility of the mayor to ensure that we care for those less fortunate. It is our responsibility as the Jewish community to also give back. Now, when you think about 20 years ago, we had the civil disturbance. Many of us were here and watched on TV, may even have locked our doors. I was on my way to First AME Church for where we were going to all come together to say this was going to be one city. But after that, in those 2 or 3 days of crisis in Los Angeles, I talked to a lot of people who lived north of Wilshire Boulevard, in the San Fernando Valley. And they understood then that what happens in other parts of the city, you should care about. You should care about that people are homeless or don't have a meal to put on their table, that individuals can't afford to get a kid to their school because they can't get to the bus and afford to get where they want to go. As mayor, it is important that we ensure that policies that are decided will impact and will make sure that those individuals are housed, whether it be our veterans, whether it be dealing with our special needs children, but most importantly, it is important to say what happens in all parts of our city is something we need to do together. And as mayor, I promise to make sure that all boats will rise and that as we develop public policy issues, it will be for all of Los Angeles. So it doesn't matter what zip code you live in, you get the same services.
Thank you, Rabbi, and if you'll allow me to badly paraphrase you, one of the things I've always loved that you've said is about privileging the afflicted and afflicting the privileged is part of what you see your role as, and I probably missed a verb there, but we are all tied together in the city. I think there's two levels that I'd answer your question and how I lead, which is I don't start with the moral or the ethical argument, because as much as I care about that and as much as I know this is a room full of ethical and moral people, people have busy lives and they're very hard-nosed about where we're going to spend our resources. So I usually tie it together in a very practical argument. Why should someone in East LA care about the traffic in West LA? Well, many people who come from the East work in West Los Angeles and have to be affected by that. Why does somebody in West Los Angeles have to care about a homeless youth in Hollywood? Well, if we don't solve the problems of that youth now, we'll all pay for him or her to be in the criminal justice system or to be homeless. Why should we care about public safety in the San Fernando Valley? Well, criminals don't stop just because there's the Cahuenga Pass or Mulholland Drive. We are tied together. And when we address issues like homelessness specifically, I have a friend here who I worked with on a project in Silver Lake called Gateways. I've been spit in the face by constituents who say, I'm liberal, but don't bring those people here. And the question is not whether we brought those people there, it's whether we are going to house the people that were already there or not. And when I said, you know, it costs about $5,000 a year to house them, but it can be up to $20,000 a year, a weekend, just to put them in the emergency room, we can make the arguments of why this is in our own self-interest as well as the right thing to do.
One of the unfairnesses of running for mayor of a major city is that we ask you to solve problems that afflicts everyone everywhere, and we turn to you as though you must have the solution. So let's do that. Because inevitably, the same great questions have to be asked, and at least, I mean, I don't know which direction to go, but let's start with education. It's no secret to anyone that public schools fail at an alarming rate, that dropout rates increase rather than decrease, that all the experiments, charter schools and other experiments, have some limited success, but on the whole, our educational system, especially compared with some other countries, falls farther and farther behind. Now, I suppose that it would be interesting to criticize past efforts, but what I'm going to ask you to do instead is tell me what you would do that hasn't been done that might make some difference, not to solve the problem, because the problem is immense and complicated, but to make some headway.
Well, it's hard to find something that hasn't been done, except for potentially something that I've advocated and met with Superintendent Daisy over, and that is public school choice. And I mean real choice. And it's choice that there are certain limitations that we have to face. When you talk about charters, you're talking about choice. When you talk about vouchers, you're talking about choice. When I spoke earlier about a trade tech diploma to give our students a choice of which direction they want to go, we're talking about choice. But something that hasn't been done here in the LAUSD, and our size may preclude it, But one of the things that I discussed with Superintendent Daisy, based on a model of the district where I went to high school, a suburb of Dallas called Garland High School, called the city of Garland, but you could go to any school you wanted in the entire district, a city of about 250,000 people, no matter where you lived. And what that did was it gave parents and students a choice. I actually switched high schools between my freshman year and sophomore year within the same district. It forces some of the excellence throughout the district. Now, the limitation that we have in the LAUSD is our size and transportation requirements and needs to meet federal standards and guidelines, but something that Superintendent Daisy agreed we might want to try.
Look, I understand how fragile it is to grow up in these neighborhoods, especially where those graduation rates are not just numbers, but are real. My graduating class was less than half than the class that I started with. I understand that it is so fragile that someone that could be super talented, have both parents, and all the variables seem to be going in their way, like my best friend in middle school, can just walk home a different path than I did, and because of a few positive influences in my life and a few negative ones in his, I go to Stanford, he drops out of school and is no longer with us. This stuff hits close to home, and I feel the urgency to address it. It is where we need to be putting all of our resources. And I don't care if the mayor doesn't have jurisdiction over the school district, because education shouldn't be about what happens inside of the classroom. Education is a 24/7 job, and we need to increase the educational opportunities outside of the classroom, and they need to be not just for young people, but for older folks as well. In fact, education should be family-oriented, because when I was growing up, my mom didn't tell me to do my homework. She was studying English on her own, and not only did she get a new skill set, but she inspired me to do more. That's what we need in these neighborhoods, and that's not where our focus is, and that's where it should be. As mayor, this is my #1 priority, is to increase the education to employment opportunities for young and old.
I'm a product of LA Unified School District, and my son Thomas is in 4th grade at LAUSD at Colfax Elementary School. And as I say that, I tell people because it's personal. It's personal. I said this on the debate last night. What every parent wants is to make sure their kid has a good education, and will do anything to make that happen and stand up for them. And so when I think about an idea that hasn't been either fully implemented or done yet, it really is devolution from the bureaucracy downtown down to the school. To make sure that that principal who changed my school that my son went from a 650 API, which is not very good, to a 928, because she invested in that school. Parents, teachers, kids, she held them accountable. And so as decisions are made downtown, which really have nothing to do with the classroom, that's what I think we should do. Give the tools to our teachers, give them the resources they need, give the power to our principals to actually manage those schools, for us to be able to have the funding from the state of California. Instead of us being the 47th in the country in per pupil spending, we should be higher than that. And to make sure that we think of innovative ways where the city of LA and the school district can work together, because it is important about our future. And it's why in 1988 I started LA's Best After School program with Tom Bradley, because we understood that it wasn't just those 10 schools, it was 188 schools we're now today, that what happens in those schools after school is a part of what our future is going to be for Los Angeles. And as mayor, I will fight for a good educational system that is local in our communities.
You know, this is also personal for me as the father of a beautiful new baby girl, as somebody who was a teacher before I was on the city council, and as somebody who understands the importance of our education system being the center of our city again. 3 things. 1, I want to work hard as mayor to put our best teachers in some of our worst schools, to figure out the pathways to lift up those schools that continue to fail year after year. 2, I will go to Sacramento and change how we get our funding. We've been shortchanged for years. The number has been too low of what we're guaranteed under Prop 98, which we all voted on, It's only about $7,000 a year that we're supposed to be guaranteed. We've been getting $5,700, but half of that comes up front and half in IOUs. Try to manage a school district and you wonder why arts ed is gone, which I will help bring back, why adult ed has been so cut and early ed has been cut. But the last thing to do is to break down the walls. We get a lot of lip service about how we should do that, how schools should be the center of our community, but I've done it and produced results. In my district, I built libraries, ball fields, put an after-school program in each one. I use city money in our schools. I've had students come up to me say, thank you so much, Councilmember Garcetti. I was gonna drop out of this school because our ball field was just a bunch of dirt and it made me feel like dirt. But now that the city stepped up and we have a park on the weekends and a great ball field during the day, my grades are going up. I joined a sports team and I'm gonna graduate. I'm gonna make sure those partnerships exist and that we put schools at the center of the community for all of us by breaking down the walls that have turned them into islands. That's not acceptable anymore.
Everybody's children and grandchildren deserve the right to be educated in a manner which would lead them into a four-year education to go to college so that you can be competitive in the job market and have a decent life. I've had the good fortune to work with the Los Angeles Unified School District for the last 11 years in locating schools in area where children were bused 1.5 to 2 hours every day. Now you see parents walking their kids to school in the morning, walking to pick them up at night, participating in after-school activities and parent organizations. These are the kinds of activities that lift the test scores of a school and improve the community. The school has become a center for the community, a place for adults to further their education, a place for people to have meetings. A school should be the focal point for a community. I've also worked very hard to improve the safety to and from school so that when children are coming back and forth, they know, their parents know that they will come home safe at night. I want to focus on middle school students. Now, we've made a lot of progress over the last 10 years in kindergarten through 5th grade. But then if you look at test scores overall, they begin to level off again at middle school. I have focused on working with principals and bringing opportunities to them to make up for what they had lost through budget cuts, arts and cultural opportunities, science and technology opportunities. I've represented downtown for the last 11 years, and there's a lot of opportunity there to share with the entire city of Los Angeles. Education is the pathway to the middle class and to true empowerment for everyone's family.
I'd like to ask you about something that you've been asked about before, but I'm guessing you haven't been asked this way. And before I just want to give credit where it's due. This is based on information that I got from Larry Weintraub, and he's a physicist and a scientist. So before you dismiss this, take it seriously. I have charts here. So recent studies have, instead of usual causes of crime, pointed to lead as a major factor in the crime trends of the last 50 years. How do you respond to the empirical evidence, and by the way, this has been traced in Europe as well as the United States, that crime is declining, and should we be putting resources toward lead abatement rather than traditional public safety measures? Anybody got some thoughts on that? I'll start with you.
Look, I have not looked at that study. However,
have it right here. Yeah.
I would love to look at it and definitely include it in any kind of public safety type of proposal, because it needs to be, there's not just one indicator for that. In fact, I've already shared a little bit of my personal story, and that wasn't because of just lead. So we need to look at all the indicators, and if that's one of them, we include it. However, look, public safety needs to be about making sure that our public safety department and their officers are out in the community and building relationships, right, and understanding what the root causes are of any crime. We need to increase the educational and recreational outlets for our young people that could be causing this crime, and make sure that there are re-entry programs for anyone who's made one of those bad decisions so that they could come back to society. As a technology executive, I actually worked with a number of police departments to make their data better so that they could get better systems, so that they could integrate their systems. Right now, a police officer has to log into multiple systems just to get their day started. We need to focus on being in the community. We need to make our technology and our data management better. And lastly, we need to invite the community to be part of any public safety solution. In fact, as mayor, I will create an organizing fellowship where we're more present in the community. And every community member can be an extension of the public safety department, because public safety is not just a police officer's job, it's everyone's responsibility.
Thank you. I believe our scientist. And look, lead paint is an issue that I actually have been dealing with when I was a city council member, and working with St. John's Hospital and others, where a lot of us think there's no more lead paint, right? Wasn't that gone a long time ago, and kids are not going to have any access to that lead paint? In fact, that's not true. And you look at a lot of the housing that exists still in Los Angeles and other places. And what we did was instruct and begin to train some of our building and safety inspectors to make that a priority in Los Angeles. But when we think about the health and safety of our children and public safety, there's a lot that impacts that. As has been talked about, it's about a good educational system. It is about health care. It's about obesity. It's about making sure that your kids have a safe place to go after school. And so I think as we look at public safety, to just think it's in a box is wrong. And so I think this is a great question, and I promise you, I don't think we'll ever get this question at any other debates about it. But that it is an important one, and that the City of Los Angeles can play a role in that as we look forward. So I would say, yes, it is an issue. Yes, we still have to move forward, and we can use our city resources to do that. Education, using our, I think, public service announcements and working to enforce the laws. And 3, let's look at other health issues that impact the public safety, because I don't think it's just lead paint.
Thank you, Rabbi. In this area, too, I have a record of results and an agenda for moving forward, and there's 2 ways I want to talk about lead. One, when I chaired our Housing and Community and Economic Development Committee, we did focus a lot. I have the highest percentage of renters in the city. 83% of my constituents are renters, and in very old housing in the heart of the city. And as a candidate, I learned about this issue, and when I became council member, I led on that committee the implementation of our lead abatement program here in the city of Los Angeles that has done tremendous things to take lead out of our apartments. That said, in terms of the link to public safety, I'll tell you another way that lead endangers our children: bullets. The lead that we see that every single day in this city may not be a mass killing, but is the slow, steady drip of violence. Even as this city was the safest big city in per capita violent crime last year in the country, there's still over 300 people who lost their lives. Families who I've held, young people who I've seen, a 16-year-old girl who was walking with her boyfriend in my district at 6:30 at night, a block and a half from a closed park, who got shot in the back and killed, which led me to action to start a program called At the Park After Dark that became part of the inspiration for what we have now with summer night lights in 32 parks, reducing violence. But we've got to take ammunition out of the hands of those who shouldn't have it, illegal guns out of the hands of those who shouldn't, help this country pass a lot of the laws that we have done here, and take away straw buyers who are buying guns for criminals that shouldn't have them. So it's the paint as well as the lead that's in the bullets.
It's an interesting premise, Rabbi, and I don't think it's a crazy question. I've been on the Board of Governors for the South Coast Air Quality Management District for about 12 years, and we have worked on the issue of lead paint in poor communities. For people who have windows that go up and down, wood frame windows, I think they're called casement windows, every time you do that, you abrade the paint and release the dust. And for children who are in the house whose cells are still forming, they're still growing, it can get into their blood system and affect the development of their brains. Now, you know, I can't draw any conclusions based on that alone as to who will end up leading a life of crime and negativity, but from what I have seen as a lay person and one who's represented an area that has been disproportionately affected by violent crime, what I see is undiagnosed mental illness, untreated physical abuse, and emotional issues that were never addressed early on in early childhood, that people had nowhere to turn. And the only place they turn in an area where there is not enough support service is to gang life or someone who takes them off track and into a life that they might not have otherwise had. Many people who end up there have great leadership quality. They just turned left when they should have turned right. So we need to offer them choices so that everyone's child has a chance to have a level playing field in this city.
Very interesting as well. Any kind of scientific data that we can review that will give us information on how to potentially reduce crime is something that any urban center like Los Angeles must welcome. You know, there are areas where that are not so obvious as has just been described. But we also lose sight of some of the things that are more obvious. We're seeing crime stats go up in a number of communities across the city, and we're trying to figure out why. Some people blame AB 109, which is the early release legislation they call prison realignment. There have been a number of articles written about that, connections made to an increase, a spike in crime. Then you have another metal circumstance, copper wire, right here in your community. Copper wire, where these thieves are going in and stealing copper wire, of course, from your neighborhoods. And what's it causing? You go through parts of West Los Angeles and other parts of the city, and the streetlights are all dark, all across the city. That creates a hazard, a public safety hazard. You know, it's dark streets, it makes things more dangerous, and it costs more because we have to send our repair crews out to solve that problem. And then, of course, we have the obvious circumstance with the fire department response time, bad data going in. And how about putting GPS in our fire trucks so they don't have to use Thomas guides? Things that are obvious.
In 1 or 2 points, what are the most effective things that a mayor can do to make the climate for business more hospitable in Los Angeles?
It's me. Well, I'm proud of my record as being the architect of business tax reform in 2006, which is weaning ourselves off the gross receipts tax. We're competing with surrounding cities that have no business tax at all. And as a small business owner, I get that. As someone who's been in iconic entertainment industry and keeping our businesses here, I get that making sure that we're competitive with our surrounding cities. So that's number one, and beginning, and so I support the weaning off of the gross receipts tax going forward. Secondly, it is about making Los Angeles more business friendly. How many of you have had to go through the Building and Safety and Planning Department and it's been a nightmare, or DWP, or whatever it may be? It is not a place where you feel like you can get your voice heard, and that we need to have a real economic development center in which, in the mayor's office, that's going to be able to let you know that you're actually fighting, that the mayor is the job czar for the city of Los Angeles. And the third piece for me is also our quality of life, is making sure that our roads are fixed and that we have a place where people actually want to move their businesses, and that they don't think about the fact that, wow, I can't even go down Wilshire Boulevard. If you just pave Wilshire Boulevard, I'll vote for you for anything. It's also about having a public transportation system, because traffic impacts business. So when we think about it, the four things are not only about looking at business tax reform, it's looking at having a business-friendly city, it's making sure you're providing the quality services, and you're dealing with the issue of traffic and transportation to make sure that we're not stuck in our cars, and business and goods movement will happen here in the city of Los Angeles.
I agree with Wendy and was very proud to be co-author or co-architect of business tax reform with her in 2006, and to have continued that fight forward with 11 other measures that we have done to reduce our city's business tax, which, if you don't pay it and you're lucky enough not to, is a gross receipts tax. We tax you when you lose money. It is the most business-unfriendly tax we could ever design. For instance, when we abolished it for new car dealers this past year, 7 new car dealers are either coming back or being built in the city since we did that. That can be something lightning fast, and I've put forward a plan to get rid of it once and for all that will come to a vote in the next 2 months in City Council, from a panel of experts that came together, that after we did a big chunk of the reduction, now is saying this is how we can go the rest of the way. Second, we need job skills. We need vocational training. In my district, when I started in Hollywood, Kaiser Hospital was hiring nurse assistants, but they weren't advertising in Los Angeles anymore. And when I asked them why, they said, we were not graduating people with those skills. We advertise out of state. We advertise even overseas for these jobs needed right here in our neighborhoods. Well, I said, well, Los Angeles City College is down the street. Don't they have a nursing program? Said, no, got rid of it 2 years ago. So we worked hard, and this is my style, to break down those walls. We brought the nursing program back. We designed something to train people in the community in high school, and then to get those job skills. And over 1,000 people have now graduated and gone into healthcare jobs around the city. We need to do that in other industries, making sure we do that for aviation mechanics in Van Nuys, whose school is about to be cut, and I've jumped into to save. So I will focus on jobs, skills, and making sure this is a more business-friendly city together.
As the next mayor, I want to make sure not only for businesses but for residents that we understand how our rates, our utility rates, the money is being spent, and to break it out into pensions and salaries and how much is being spent on renewable energy and green energy and infrastructure. That applies to businesses too, so that when a business wants to either stay here or to locate here, they understand the cost of doing business because we have fully disclosed it to them, and they can calculate that into defining their budget. The other thing that I've done in downtown Los Angeles, which attracted the likes of a worldwide architectural firm of Gensler, is to move from Santa Monica to downtown Los Angeles because there was so much housing. There was so many choices. There were so many options on how their employees could get to work so that they did not have to own a car, and that the housing was affordable and at all income levels. And so they moved there, and not only have they brought their employees, they have hired even more individuals who are low income and put them to work too. So it's been a tremendous opportunity to attract a business and to ask that business to hire people who are at risk and bring them along. And we also need a workforce that is educated and ready to work. That is by far one of the most attractive aspects of bringing businesses here to Los Angeles, to know that they will always be able to find workers who can do the job.
How many years have we been talking about making our city business friendly? Many, many years. Election in and election out. And we're still not there. Rabbi, what you have described is part of what City Hall is broken. It's part of this broken City Hall that all three of my City Hall insider opponents have described one way or another in this recent campaign in just the last few months. But we're talking with the controller, the former city council president, the former city council president pro tem. They are City Hall. It is broken. They broke it. And now, I just heard that we're going to have lightning fast business tax reform, but the vote isn't until after the election. So you know what that means? We're going to see another one of those fences that come up from the special interest in City Hall. It's easy to talk about in an election cycle, and that's when it gets all of its talk. We've had 2 business tax advisory committees that have recommended getting rid of the gross receipts tax, but we're still talking about it. They're still flirting with it, and we still have a city that is hostile towards the private industry. How are we going to bring these jobs back when we are still putting another sales tax on the ballot, which is what they wanted to do in this city council? I will go around the city council if necessary and put a business improvement package on the ballot that includes the elimination of the gross receipts tax, because if the council won't give it to us, ladies and gentlemen, I know the people will.
There are many unique features to the city of Los Angeles, but...
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One
Please,
more.
go ahead. But one of them is the
Emmanuel
inability of the
Platex.
moderator, yes,
Exactly.
to recognize that not all the candidates have spoken. So please go ahead.
Exactly. Look, our elected officials up here could have taken a number of measures over the last decade to make our business environment more friendly to business, but not just friendly to business, but to make sure that business can actually grow here in Los Angeles. I'm the only one up here who's actually been in the business world in a revenue-producing role. I've been executive at a technology company. I've advised CEOs around the country, around the world, quite frankly, and I've actually helped raise capital for companies. When I was a technology company executive, we had positions every week to hire, but we didn't have folks from where to hire from. We need a skilled workforce. That's a business-friendly environment. We need to invest in education and training so that we have more education to employment opportunities. When I worked in the U.S. Department of the Treasury and the White House, I managed President Obama's Economic Recovery Advisory Board. After bringing economists, CEOs, the top minds around the country, the #1 solution was to build an initiative called Skills for America's Future, was to make sure that we had better coordination between the private sector, community colleges, labor unions, all the right stakeholders, so that we actually understood the jobs that were available and the skills needed to get those jobs. Lastly, as mayor, I will make sure that we have an entrepreneurship hub that has skills training in every single council district, so that we're investing across the city so that we really attract businesses with capital and a skilled workforce.
I have two more questions before we take all your final statements. The one that I had begun prematurely was that Los Angeles, as I say, has many unique features, but surely the most notable and salient one to most of the world is Hollywood. So I know that Hollywood is both lionized and also vilified for different parts of it, but let's say you had in front of you 500 of the top Hollywood executives. And
Looks like we did.
many of them, I was going to say, and some of them Jews.
What'd you say?
I said, and some of them Jews. Just to create some, verisimilitude. So what is it that you want to say to them about the movies they make, about their relationship to the city that they live in, and about the image that they give of our city and our country to the world? And is it the mayor's job to monitor, to lecture, to uplift, to help shape Los Angeles' most important industry?
Well, I represent Hollywood, and 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of Hollywood in Hollywood anymore. And it's difficult to answer your question about what image people have of Los Angeles because nothing's filmed here anymore. In fact, Battlefield Los Angeles was filmed in New Orleans. New Orleans is passing as Los Angeles in the old way that we used to have Los Angeles passing as other places. So I think first and foremost, you have to actually make the case and do the work as I have to bring some production back here, to advocate in Sacramento for the lifting of a cap on our state tax credits, which every dollar we give brings at least $1 back. But right now, it's done as a lottery. It's gone in one day in July, and it doesn't affect enough movies. We are getting our lunch stolen from us. Mayor Bloomberg said we're going to make New York the filming capital of America, when it should be Los Angeles. As mayor, I will bring that back. I have a proposal right now to make filming pilots, television pilots, free in the city of Los Angeles. And if you get picked up, the first season will be free as well, as an incentive to waive our city permits and fees to bring those jobs back here. Unfortunately, we don't have many that are putting forward an image anymore of Los Angeles. But if you look at the turnaround in Hollywood, the greatest turnaround of any neighborhood perhaps in this city economically, we've shown how we can bring that industry back. And it's not just those who we know the big names of, it's those behind the scenes and those ancillary businesses that when people stay here and spend money here, help us all.
I did a motion in the city council, and it was passed to ask the governor to extend the tax credits to bring feature films back to the state of California, and in particular Los Angeles, because it takes longer on the front end to prepare in pre-production for a feature film. But I think if we had a room full of executives from the entertainment industry, I would say this. I would encourage your creativity. I would encourage you to put people of Los Angeles back to work. We have unchecked potential here. And I would encourage you to create more apprenticeships, more internships, more opportunities to reach out to young people who may not have the connections or the wherewithal to have a career in the industry, and to pull them along with you. This is an industry that has bottomless potential. There's no ceiling on how far we can reach. But I'd also say this. I'd say work with schools. Let's talk to families. Let's talk about the portrayal of violence in movies and how it does desensitize younger people who spend too much time playing violent games online and then to go see it in the movies. And remember how it does affect the growth of the next generation.
Two things. Talking to these very creative people, we're going to have to get more creative, and we're going to have to better compete. Can you believe that as we stand here in Hollywood, that Hollywood has left Hollywood? We have, and think about this for a second. Name one person, anybody, that is a successful champion or even attempted to be a champion of keeping our entertainment jobs here. What happened when other states like Texas and Michigan and Louisiana and New York, they came and they advertised here, on our television shows here, on our news stations right here, under our noses. And we absolutely allowed it to happen. And now they have created infrastructures that only we had. So we've lost that advantage. We have to get creative. I mentioned earlier that I'm the candidate that has been endorsed by the Bring Hollywood Home Foundation, in part because I got creative. I've worked with independent producers, all right, smaller films, to come up with the Los Angeles production benefit. And I published the details of it in the Huffington Post and would encourage you to read about it, because it's a way to keep independent film production here without budget busting that we would have to do for incentives. And finally, we have to educate the public about the economic benefits to all the other businesses of being able to compete with other states to bring the entertainment industry back here where the foundation of it lives.
We are the creative capital of the world, and we need to maintain that. And the way we will is by making sure that the entertainment world continues down the innovation spectrum and includes more technology. In fact, the way I think about this is that each one of these entrepreneurship hubs needs to be focused on innovation, having entertainment and technology companies working together so that we can create new things. That's how we actually create value. That's how we can actually move forward our economy and create new jobs. And I want to be focused on the independent producers, on making sure that we are helping them with the costs that they incur. Specifically, looking at their equipment, cameras, storage of all their footage, things that are core to just helping them get off the ground and allow their creativity to flourish. That's where I will be focused as mayor, is making sure that people continue to start up, because once they're here and they understand where we're moving in LA with the vision going forward, they will want to stay here. And as mayor, I will make sure that it's integral throughout LA and not just in Hollywood, and make sure that that creativity and innovation, that culture is rampant throughout the city of Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles, we don't have runaway production, we have ranaway production. How many of you in this room have someone who has some relationship to the entertainment industry? Okay. How many of us have families that have been separated because they've had to film in another state or another country or another city? It happens. I'm the only candidate sitting up here who lobbied very hard to make sure that we had that tax incentive for the state of California, and have lobbied very hard to make sure that it is extended greater than just 2 years and more than $100 million. The only candidate has served on the California Film Commission to push hard to make sure that we actually had those incentives and that we make it easier to film in the city of Los Angeles. I worked for the iconic DreamWorks and Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen, who have created dreams and made them realities of so many people and the kinds of jobs that we create. I'm proud to have had the endorsement of IATSE, which represents thousands of workers, because they know not only have I been an advocate, but I will be an advocate to make sure. I've sat in a room like this with executives and others and talked about the kinds of incentives we can bring here, making sure that our neighborhoods understand that having filming is a good thing here in the city of Los Angeles. And the jobs that we create are not just in front of the camera or the back of the camera, but they're the dry cleaners and the caterers and the hairdressers and the makeup artists. We must keep LA here, keep Hollywood here in Los Angeles. It is our signature industry, and I will fight for that.
Before I ask the last question, which is, I hope will be part of your closing statement, I just want to say, on behalf of everyone here, I think it's remarkable we have 5 extraordinary people running for the mayor of our city. And it's really enormously impressive to listen to all of you, and we're very grateful for it. So as part of your closing statement, for which, if the timekeeper will allow, we'll give 3 minutes as opposed to 2, because I'm going to ask you to focus at least part of it on one thing, which is These are all concerned, active, capable citizens of Los Angeles. In your closing statement, will you also tell us what should we be doing that we are not doing to make the city better? And with that, I believe we begin with you.
Thank you again, Rabbi, and thank you for an unusual forum. Thank you. This is what I want to close. I want to say to all of you that I cajole you, I ask you to be engaged, to pay close attention. Don't just listen to the way people speak, listen to how they vote. Don't just listen to their words, look at their deeds. Examine who they are as a person and understand what their record means to you and your quality of life and whether they have improved it or not. I've had great role models in my life. The rabbi asked earlier a question about, I think, Mayor Bradley or the role models of mayors from the East Coast cities. Well, I've been very fortunate. I've had 3 great mayors in my life. The first 2 were my parents. I grew up in the Midwest. My father was elected mayor in 1966, and my mother was elected mayor where I grew up some 20-plus years later, and at the age of 86 years old, she is still on the Planning and Zoning Commission. So everything I learned, everything I learned about building housing, subdividing, putting in a sewer system, making sure the trees got trimmed, I learned from my parents. So how lucky was I when I came to California in 1974 and saw this elegant, intelligent man who led this city into the future, who provided a foundation for people like me upon which to build. I would not have had a district to grow if it hadn't been for Tom Bradley. I would not have had a transportation system to build onto on the exposition line to connect, finally connect the city from the east to the west, the likes of which have not been seen since the Santa Monica Freeway, to bring young people from one end of the city to the other so that they don't have to buy a car, they don't have to pay for insurance, they don't have to pay for gas, to make sure that we build enough housing for people, to make sure that we'll have enough housing that's affordable, that your children will be able to move out of your house one day. And you'll have that extra bedroom back. I've worked the last 11 years to build middle-class communities in downtown Los Angeles. I can do that for the entire city. I've been able to work collectively and be the steward of 90,000 new jobs here in the city of Los Angeles with $40 million of new revenue into the city's general fund. Why should you care? You should care because that's new revenue to pay for your core city services, fire, police, sanitation, et cetera. I want you to vote for me. I hope that you feel like you've gotten to know me better tonight. Remember what I said, but most of all, look at what I've done. My name is Jan Perry, and I want to be your next mayor on March 5th.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for being here. I've never been to a synagogue and heard the rabbi speak for so little, so thank you for your restraint. One thing that I would ask of everybody to do in this city is first to make sure you don't just vote, but that you get 5 people who were not planning to vote, because half the number of people that voted in the November elections will vote in this one. I started with that, and I want to end with that. It is our responsibility to have those conversations. Hey, are you planning to vote? Because nothing works better than peer pressure. If you want a mayor with a proven track record of creating jobs, and don't take my word for it, Chamber of Commerce does a study every single year. We're #1 in the midst of a recession in creating jobs, then vote for me. We're #1 in new business receipts in this city. And if that matters to you, then vote for me. If you want somebody who tackles the toughest issues and doesn't stand on the sidelines in times of fiscal crisis like pension reform, those times when you may pay a political price, but it's the right thing to do for the city, then vote for me. And if you want the candidate with the boldest agenda of where we are going to go, of a public transit infrastructure, of extending the Wilshire subway here, of making sure we have a Crenshaw line and a transit tunnel through the 405 instead of a widening of the 405, which is like finding a slightly bigger sponge to throw in the ocean and wondering why it's waterlogged, of somebody who will look at making sure that we have schools that are turned around and has a proven track record of over 7 schools whose scores have improved by over 200 points because we got engaged and involved, then I want your support. I'm so proud of the coalition of Angelinos who have been part of my campaign. Come to my campaign office. Volunteer for one of us. But I'd love it for me. But come and see folks from every part of town, every age, every religion, every ethnicity, that reflect what this city and my campaign is about. The most specific agenda to create jobs, whether it's my plan for 20,000 new green jobs with solar installation and cleaning up our water, or whether it's the 130,000 jobs we can do when we get rid of our city's gross receipts tax. You see, it's not just about identifying savings, it's about implementing savings. It's not about identifying problems, it's about solving them. It's not just saying pension reform is something we have to work on, it's actually jumping in and doing it. Those are the reasons I hope I've earned your vote and that I can earn your vote to be your mayor. I've put neighborhoods back to work, and if you trust me as your mayor, I will put this city back to work. I've tackled our toughest problems in the worst days, and if you elect me mayor, I will lead us to our very best days. And this is not about qualifications. We're all qualified up here. This is about results, about a proven record, about job creation, and about getting the job done. So if I can ask you to do one last thing, it's to visit ericgarcetti.com. To go there, sign up, volunteer, get involved, learn more about the campaign, and I hope that I can earn your vote to be your next mayor, because I'm convinced, seeing the turnaround we have led in the heart of Los Angeles, that our city's best days are still ahead. Thank you.
You know, when I decided to run for mayor, I decided I didn't just want to be the mayor. I wanted to do the job of mayor. And doing the job of mayor means actually being able to run the city, to be the CEO of the city. It means to engage all of the public, as we've done tonight, in making our city better. Because as great a mayor as I'm going to be, I can't do it alone. As when I ran for my first office in city council, I won by 250 votes, 225 votes out of 30,000. No one thought I could win. I did, and the people I talked to. And it's why I've opened up offices in Crenshaw, the West Side, San Fernando Valley, Boyle Heights, to engage people and getting inspired about what we can do to make Los Angeles the great city that we can. And I believe very strongly that I have the most qualifications. Again, all nice people, but the qualifications of actually being in the public sector and the private sector, of working for an iconic industry in the entertainment industry, and running a small business, and even driving a forklift in our business, and a truck, and doing the accounting. But I also know what it takes to make Los Angeles better, to be the fiscal watchdog. And yes, not only to identify problems and identify savings, but pushing to try to make sure that they're implemented on the mayor and council, to make sure that we actually implement those recommendations. Because as we look at, these are your taxpayer dollars. You want to make sure they're going for the purposes in which they were intended. And when we look at the future of Los Angeles, you want not only a fiscal watchdog, you want someone who's going to be the job czar, who is going to be the person who calls those businesses and retains them, like I did as a city council member and as controller. Whether it was OPI nail polish in the San Fernando Valley or those small business owners who were just trying to survive. I'm going to be a mayor for all of LA, so the services that you get, it doesn't matter, as I mentioned earlier, what zip code you live in. That means if you call 911, you're a senior citizen, you expect the same quick response no matter where you live. That means that if you are a child, if you have children and you want to go to a clean and safe park, you don't have to drive 10 miles. What it means is that we get our fiscal house in order so we can provide the services of filling our potholes and, yes, repairing our streets and making Los Angeles the most business-friendly city. The next mayor of Los Angeles is going to have to make some tough decisions. I'm that person. I will close with a story that about my mom. My mom grew up in a small town in southern Illinois. She was a coal miner's daughter. And she used to go uptown to go trick-or-treating, and when she knocked on the door at someone's house, they closed the door, slammed it on her, and said, "We don't give to your kind." And I'm standing here today because she inspired me. Because she said, one day I'm going to own those homes and show them that I made something of myself. And I stand here today because my mom inspired me. She gave me that strength. I want to take that inspiration and that strength to lead the city, and I can do that with my experience, with my knowledge, and being the best mayor I possibly can. I hope that you will go and vote on March 5th and volunteer and vote for Wendy Gruhl, the next mayor of the city of Los Angeles. Thank you very, very much.
Let's talk about results and experience. We have the highest unemployment rate in the country, the lowest graduation rates in the country. And we're on the brink of bankruptcy, and that's not political rhetoric, that's what our own mayor and his chief administrative officer have said. What I see up on stage are 3 elected officials who have served in office for a combined 30-plus years. And they vote together 99% of the time. Now, if you're happy with the results and the experience, then you have 3 great choices and you should vote for them. But if you want something new, something better, something dynamic, then I present to you an alternative. Someone who's actually worked in the private, public, and nonprofit sector. Someone who understands the problems of Los Angeles firsthand and feels the urgency to address them today. I want to make sure that we realize the potential that LA has to bring to this country. We need to invest in the communities that have been underinvested for too long. We need to harness the creativity, the energy of our creative industries such as entertainment, technology, and support them so they could really be the drivers of economic growth in this city. And we need to invest in our workforce. We need to increase education to employment opportunities and make that a 24/7 priority of the mayor. And lastly, what do I ask of you? We have a rich culture of philanthropy here in the city of Los Angeles, and especially in the Jewish community. We need to bring all of our communities together in that spirit of tzedakah, of caring for one another, of caring for our neighbors, for our brothers and sisters, for our communities, especially those who have been underserved for too long. LA needs that spirit. LA needs you, and you deserve that from your next mayor. Thank you. I invite you to vote for me on March 5th. My name is Emmanuel Pleites, and you don't have to go to my website. You can just search Pleites on Google, and you'll find me.
Rabbi, to include your question in my closing, of course, you all are engaged because you are here. So I would echo what Mr. Garcetti said a moment ago. And by the way, Ms. Perry,
Yes.
congratulations on the vote you got from the panel.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I would echo what Mr. Garcetti said about bringing others. I would ask you to recruit others to look at this race, your neighbors, family, friends, colleagues, and especially if you're leaning in my direction. Now, a very serious number from 2009, about 156,000 votes, give or take. That's the number that Antonio Villaraigosa was elected with. And that was not the margin, that was the total for the second largest city in America. So that's why we ask you to recruit others. Now, I'm going to describe a few crises for a minute and then tell you what I think I want you to do in response to them. First of all, we talked a little bit about tonight, the jobs crisis. We have a very high unemployment rate, of course. A budget crisis. Multiple deficits in the hundreds of millions of dollars year in and year out. An infrastructure crisis. Second worst roads in the nation. Broken sidewalks. potholes. An education crisis. We talked about it already a bit tonight. A transportation crisis. You live in West Los Angeles. You understand the transportation crisis that we have here. A public safety crisis with the fire department response time scandal. A corruption crisis with building and safety department indictments. A Coliseum Commission scandal. Housing department indictments. Housing Authority Commission scandal. DWP credit card scandal. I could go on. These crises have a common denominator, and it is a crisis of leadership. We need a new leader who brings the independence into the decision-making process to make the tough decisions that, yes, the controller admits we have to make. But you can't make those tough decisions. They can't be made by someone that is chosen by the folks that the decisions are going to directly affect. When our public sector unions come in to negotiate, they're negotiating with themselves, and that must change. So what you can do is go to my website at kevinjamesformayor.com, and you will see very detailed solutions under the issues section to all of these crises. And then I hope you will vote with your friends that you bring into the election for me, Kevin James, on March 5th. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you for coming tonight. After he said I was going to do it, I